time for Wednesday's hour number 2 on Hashtag Daily K with your host, Peter Bint. Korean dramas, movies, and even lyrics. Why is the world paying attention to Korean stories?
From classics to modern masterpieces, time to dig deep into the charms of Korean literature.
On Check It Out
with Paul.
Paul.
Yes, Peter.
Did you know there are 2 types of water in Jeju?
Are there?
Yes.
I had no idea.
Wow.
I wish there was somebody who would maybe spend a few minutes telling me that.
I do wish that too. We listened to your little, what do we call that? Public service announcement, little promotion of Jeju. I love that. Listing all the beaches and stuff. There's a Maldives of Korea. I didn't even know that. That sounds cool.
Neither did I until I did that announcement a couple of years ago.
Fantastic stuff. And yes, get down to Jeju once everything is safe and sound. But you know what I realised, Paul? In the early days of COVID, and maybe until the beginning of this year, we'd have our weekly gripe about Corona.
Yeah.
And we haven't done that because it's been not too bad, like ups and downs, and we kind of ridden the storm. But today, oh dear.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. It feels like we're heading into new territory. We haven't had numbers of cases this bad in Korea since December 24th or 25th last year. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm always trying to be cautious, but I know that more people have been going out. We've had protests on the weekends. We've had secret parties of 300 people in Gangnam doing all sorts.
Oh, my goodness.
It's time for everyone to take a little bit of personal responsibility to make sure that they're masked up and maybe just stay at home for a little bit, it feels.
Yeah, I listened to the news this morning and they were saying, the worrying thing is it's spreading, especially throughout the 20s and 30s, who are more socially active and have been going to clubs because they're open. And I'm pretty certain, although I can't say firsthand because I've not been, that the mask wearing will be a bit lax in a club. I can't imagine everyone's got it on all the time down there.
I know. I've seen a footage of outside of Seoul, of one club in particular. I was shocked by the number of people not wearing masks.
Yeah, and also kids as well. Unfortunately, when they're going to school and hug ones, it's been spreading like wildfire there, even while wearing masks as well. So got to be careful with these variants too. Today's book, though, we're doing things normally on Check It Out. We've got a Korean text translated into English, right?
We have, and I'm excited. I brought something that is brand new for you today. It's a collection of 7 short stories from author Choi Eunyoung, translated by Sung Ryu, and it's called Shoko's Smile.
Shoko's Smile. Shoko의 미소 is the Korean title. Shoko, I don't know if I've heard that name in Korea, but I've definitely heard Japanese people with that name.
Well, that's because it's a Japanese person who's smiling.
Oh, wow. I don't know if we've done a text with like a Japanese character in it.
Oh, well, yeah, sure. This is the story we're going to focus on, which is about a young Korean girl and a young Japanese girl and their friendship. But I love this. This was only just released June 1st this year. So we're really getting to it straight away.
Nice.
And all 7 stories are brilliant. They're a little bit melancholic and they're all about love and loss. Not necessarily romantic love, but love of family, love of friends. They're not high tragedy, but I guess they're more like little meditations and reflections on the ups and downs and the difficulties that we face with lovers, friends, family and life. And I read it pretty much in one sitting. I was really, really touched. I loved each and every story. But of course, we don't have time. So we're going to focus on Shoko's Smile, the titular story today.
All right, that sounds like a good idea. Did you hear me in our number 1 talking about the Disaster Tourist, which got translated last year? We did it quite fresh out the oven, and it won that award as well.
Yes, the Dagger Award in the UK for crime fiction. Great to see it. I'm glad that Korean fiction is continually getting recognition. It's brilliant.
Yes, and today I hope it's brilliant. Let's hear more about the author first.
Yes, Choi Eunyoung, born in 1984 in Gwangmyeong in Gyeonggi-do province. Her father was a teacher, so she was brought up in a very educational environment. Studied well, Korean literature at Korea University. And while she was there, she became really interested in social issues. This is, we're talking about the late 90s. So this is after democracy comes to Korea, but then also after the IMF, a very interesting time in Korea. And her social issues interest actually flowed into her writing. She made her debut in 2013 with Shoko's Smile, which won the Writers' World New Writers Award, as well as the 5th Munhak Dongnae Young Writers Award, and she's gone on to win other prizes. Actually, this collection was her first short story collection published in Korean in 2016. So she's a relatively new author, new on the scene.
I see. So Shoko Smile came up first and then the collection later.
Yes. And there are all sorts of stories. We've got the story we're dealing with is about Korea's relationship to Japan. We've got stories about Vietnam, about the Sewol ferry disaster, and much, much more. But the thing is, the stories are not done on a macro level. They're done on a micro level. They're talking about very personal relationships, individuals, and how they're interacting with other individuals.
I'm really interested today, just from a personal point of view. Korea's relationship with Japan fascinates me. Growing up with a Korean mother in the UK who, was still fresh out of colonial times, like her relations with Japan were a bit frosty.
Yes.
And then I had a very close Japanese friend at school. We had a lot of Japanese people in North London growing up, and so I was a bit confused, to be honest. I'm looking forward to this. And the translator...
Oh my goodness. I have to say, this is the first time for us featuring Sung Ryu, but this is her year. 2021 is the year of Sung Ryu. She's had 3 translations out this year alone.
Busybody.
So it's a big debut. She grew up in South Korea, in the US, in Canada, studied at the University of Toronto, as well as the Hanguk University of Foreign Studies. She's now based in Singapore. And the 3 books we've had, we've got this one, Shoko's Smile. We've also had Tower by Bae Myung-hoon, and I'm Waiting for You and Other Stories by Kim Bo-young, which was translated with Sophie Bowman. I have these other 2 books on my bookshelf.
Ooh.
I am waiting to read them and looking forward to introducing them on this show as well. It's incredible to have such a big debut, to have 3 books out in the same year. I loved this translation. I think she captures the spirit of Choi Eunyoung so brilliantly. I'm looking forward to reading her books that have been published. I'm looking forward to reading future translations. And I must say, get your hands on Shoko's Smile.
Fantastic. Ringing endorsement. And hopefully we can feature some of those other books in the future as well. So it's a tale of 2 friends, one from Japan and one from Korea. Where are we going to kick things off?
We're going to kick off on their second meeting.
Okie dokie.
Shoko was wearing a sleeveless yellow print dress, her long hair pulled up in a high ponytail. She gazed impassively down at me as I sat on the deck, sipping ice water. Then she trudged over and sat some distance away from me. She smelled of fabric softener. We sat in silence and just stared ahead. Shoko spoke slowly, still facing forward. I thought I'd be the one to visit you in Korea. I said to the side of her face, "You're disappointed I beat you to it." A pause. Then Shoko opened her mouth, ever so slightly, to say, "I've missed you." The words coming out like a sigh. As I was a little mad at her, I didn't tell her I'd missed her too, yet hearing her say she missed me made me tear up. Some lovers are like friends. Well, some friends are like lovers. Whenever I thought of Shoko, I was scared she would stop liking me. But in fact, Shoko was nobody. My everyday life wouldn't change if I lost her right now. She wasn't an employer or a school friend I shared my day with, or even a friend who lived nearby. Shoko was not one of the simple cogs running the machine of my daily life. In all honesty, Shoko was nothing.
Few comments from our listeners. Sophie saying it sounds like she's kind of remembering a few dark memories at the same time as like being happy to see her friend.
Yes, well, there is a little bit of darkness in there. We'll get to that. Tropic Girl saying that's interesting. Smelling of fabric softener. An interesting opening read. But I'm not jumping to any early conclusions.
Yeah, I like the smell of fabric softener. It's better than other smells that maybe we secrete ourselves.
All right, moving on. Donna in New York says, I love stories and dramas about personal relationships. Character-driven work is my cup of tea. I miss my best friend who lives in Tokyo. Well, Donna, then this book is for you because it's all about the character. It's all about these individuals and their thoughts and their lives. And Choi Eunyoung really does a great job of capturing each and every one of them.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I guess many of us might have a friend like Shoko who is a long-distance friend, someone who doesn't live in the same country. And when you speak to them, you might be really close and stuff, but you probably go weeks or months without talking to them. It's kind of blunt, but also true that friend maybe is nothing in your daily life kind of cog, which is a really interesting take on this.
It's a terrible thought, but a true one, unfortunately. And this is really interesting because I picked this up at this overdue reunion. So much has happened in the intervening years. And the narrator, Soyu, and Shoko, her Japanese friend, have a really odd relationship. So if we go back to the very beginning, the book starts with the narrator. She's on the beach and she's digging her hands into the cold sand. And she's feeling like she's on the edge of the universe, the edge of the world.
Wow.
And that's something that Shoko once said. And then she talks about Shoko and explains that Shoko always wanted to leave her hometown by the sea. She wanted to live in the city, live in Tokyo. She wanted to travel to Korea, have a boyfriend, get a pet cat, do anything, do everything. But we learn as the story goes on that not all of that was possible.
Oh.
And we learned that the two of them met thanks to an exchange program. I don't know if about you, but when I was a kid, we had exchange programs with our twin towns in Germany and France.
Oh,
so I went to France for a week, and a kid from France stayed at my house for a week.
Oh.
And so a similar thing here, that Shoko and her friends from a school in Japan come to Korea, to Soyu's town, to stay for a week. And Shoko's very shy and gets billeted at the narrator's house, and it's all a bit awkward.
Sure.
They have to communicate in English because, well, the narrator doesn't speak Japanese and Shoko doesn't speak Korean. And the funny thing is, when they get to the house, Shoko immediately gets on with the narrator's grandpa.
Oh, how come?
Well, the grandpa grew up in that time of occupation of when you had to learn Japanese and speaks Japanese very, very well. And there's sort of this immediate connection. But it's not the same between them. There's a coldness between Shoko and the narrator, and her smile. When she smiles politely, it leaves the narrator feeling a little bit cold.
Oh, like it's not a real smile.
Yeah.
I misinterpreted the title of this book completely.
So there's a warmth with the grandpa, but when Shoko talks to the narrator, she's cold, she's standoffish, she's complaining about her own grandfather who puts pressure on her. But the week goes well.
Okay.
And Shoko brings this energy to the house. So Grandpa and Mum feel sort of energized by Shoko's presence. And then, well, she's gone. She's back to Japan. But they keep in touch. The funny thing is, when Shoko writes to the narrator, she also writes to Grandpa.
Oh, interesting.
2 letters, one in English for the narrator, one in Japanese for Grandpa.
Oh.
Grandpa gets the happy stories. Grandpa gets the picture postcard of Shoko's life. And the narrator gets the dark confessions, the difficulties, the struggles of her life. And this is every 10 days or so.
That's a lot.
Yeah, up until graduation from high school, these letters come and come and come until the final letter, Shoko confesses to the narrator she's not going to be able to go to Tokyo to study, which was her dream. And she doesn't think she'll ever be able to come back to Korea.
Oh, that's sad. Maybe she feels secretly closer to the friend to be able to confide all these things.
Well,
perhaps.
yeah, it's a very odd relationship. And then it stops. There's no communication. And so the narrator goes off to university and decides after a few years, okay, I'm going to go to Japan. I'm going to visit her and see how she's doing. Check she's okay.
Okay.
And she goes there and she meets the grandpa, who Shoko has always complained about.
Her own grandpa.
Yeah, who turns out to be really nice. And then she meets Shoko, and we heard in that first excerpt, Shoko's changed.
She said she missed her.
She missed her, but there's something odd about her. It's like she's empty. a shadow of her former self. She's so distant, so different. The narrator feels uncomfortable and leaves. And she lies to her grandpa and tells him, oh, sorry, I couldn't meet her. I didn't get to see her.
Oh, no.
And then a few years later, she's graduated. She's a struggling screenwriter. And her grandpa comes to visit her in the city. And he's never visited her before. And he's brought her a letter from Shoko with a photo of Shoko looking happy.
Oh.
She's changed a lot. She's wearing makeup. She's working as a physical therapist in a hospital. She's got a cat. She seems to be happier. But the narrator feels uncomfortable. And instead of welcoming her grandpa in, she's waiting for him to leave, almost pushing him out, even though it's raining.
What's going on here? The plot thickens.
My double folding umbrella, the only umbrella I had, would not unfold. Grandpa was an impatient man and was already striding far ahead of me. The umbrella should automatically unfold at the push of a button. But the button was stuck, and the umbrella wouldn't open manually either. Heavy raindrops came pouring down. I was angry at Grandpa for not bringing a single umbrella with him in this weather. There was a convenience store at the end of the alley, but I didn't have the money to buy him an umbrella. Grandpa slowed down from his brisk walk and looked back, giving me a wave and a sheepish grin. I clutched my broken umbrella and sprinted toward him. Gulping back tears, determined not to cry in front of him, I handed him the umbrella. Don't need it. It ain't raining that hard. Hey, why are you crying? I snatched back the umbrella from him and fumbled to open it. But because this umbrella won't open, it was working fine before. Of course, now when I actually need it, well, you're crying over nothing. Here, give me that. With a little tinkering, Grandpa managed to open the stubborn umbrella. He chuckled and held it over me. I told him to take it, but he wouldn't listen. The rain fell harder and harder. I offered to accompany him to the bus stop at least, but he said he was fine. He would go by himself. As he spoke, his eyes turned red. They seemed to say, "Let me go so I can cry." I released his hand. Grandpa strode off without a backward glance. That headstrong and impulsive, yet soft-hearted, strange man. My strange grandpa. That mess of a man. I gripped the umbrella Grandpa had held over me, watching his back until he disappeared.
What's going on here? She wants him to leave. She seems a bit cruel almost to Grandpa.
Yeah, or perhaps jealous of his relationship with Shoko.
That's natural, isn't it?
Is she the granddaughter that he never had?
Oh.
That she never could be? She seems to feel shame for herself, that she can't succeed in the same way that Shoko has finally managed to.
Well, she's still struggling.
Yeah, before Shoko was sort of down and out. She was better than her, but now Shoko's almost replacing her, it feels, in some ways for her. And she reads the English letter that Shoko has sent, and Shoko talks about how when she visited, she was not in her right mind, but she's changed and she regrets what happened, and it feels like she's lost the narrator forever.
Oh.
And then we learn that Grandpa is dying.
Shoko's grandpa.
No, the narrator's grandpa.
Oh, no.
He's hidden it from her, but her mother scolds her after this visit and tells her what's going on. And so she moves back home and spends the final days together, coming to terms with his death.
Oh.
And after he passes, she goes through his belongings and she finds the letters and the photos from Shoko, photos of the time she spent with him all those years ago. And she and her mother reflect on how hard Grandpa had actually worked to keep the family going. He could never do what he wanted to do. It was always for the family. And as she's about to leave, she looks in the mailbox and she finds a letter for her grandpa from Shoko.
Oh, a final one.
Yeah. So she doesn't know what to do. She decides to get it translated. Reads it. And in it, Shoko talks about her own grandpa. And she also says she had to write to the narrator's grandpa even though he asked her to stop. And thanks him for everything.
Okay.
And the narrator, she replies, but she replies in quite an abrupt way, quite a rude way, telling Shoko that her grandpa's dead.
Oh.
And then one night Shoko calls on the phone.
Oh.
But the narrator's still jealous and still sort of pushing her back. And at first she refuses to meet her, but then Shoko says, I've got 200 letters that your grandpa wrote to me, and I want to give them to you.
200? Wow. And Shoko's in Korea?
Well, she comes to Korea. She goes and stays in Myeongdong, and they meet up. And the narrator gets the letters, and she looks through them, and she sees how much care was taken to write them. There are doodles here and there of birds and elephants.
That's touching.
She didn't know her grandpa wanted to be an artist.
But Shoko did, maybe?
He told her.
Oh.
And Shoko translates some of these letters from when he was sick. We learn how proud he was of his granddaughter. And how proud he was of her trying to get her films made. And they spend the next couple of days together, and Shoko translates the letters, they go to the bathhouse, they share these beautiful moments together, and then they say goodbye at the airport. And it feels like they've really become close, closer than they've ever been before. But at the same time at the airport, when Shoko's leaving, there's a coldness to her polite smile when she says goodbye.
Still remaining.
I'm in London.
I'm in Australia.
Tokyo.
The Philippines.
Finland.
Indonesia.
New York.
Arirang Radio.
Now live in Seoul.
Shoko pushed a bundle of letters from another shopping bag toward me. These are letters from Mr. Kim when he was sick. I picked one out and opened it. Drawn on a corner of the page was a puppy sticking its tongue out and bounding forward, its big long ears flapping in the wind. Shoko held the letter and translated it. I ate octopus porridge today. It's one of my favourite dishes, but it looked like someone's vomit and smelled awful. So I just about managed to force it down. My daughter told me, Dad, you've got to eat no matter what. Like a stern mother. I ate for my daughter's sake. My daughter who shouted, Did I want to starve myself to death? I ate as I threw up. Why had Grandpa never said a word about any of this to me? I asked Shoko, Did he write about me at all? Shoko stirred her iced Americano with a straw, smiling. He boasted, You were a carbon copy of him. When we started exchanging letters again, you won't guess how proud he was of you. He also wrote about attending a film festival that screened your movie. I couldn't invite Grandpa to the film festival. I didn't think it right to ask a man nearly in his 80s to make the trip to Seoul just for that. And I'd already given out every free ticket I received to the people in the film industry I wanted approval from. I didn't even ask Grandpa if he could come to the screening. It was only after he badgered me many times to show him the movie that I played him the file saved on my laptop. It was a 15-minute short about a girl who loses her home and lives in an abandoned, half-constructed apartment before turning into a rat.
Oh, so I guess Grandpa was lying that he was at the film festival, just like boasting about his granddaughter, I suppose, to Shoko.
Yeah, he loved her so much, but maybe because he was a very traditional Korean male, he couldn't show her in that way.
Yeah, not directly, all in these letters to Shoko. So she was jealous of Shoko, but it seems like her grandpa obviously had a lot of love for her as well. Oh, it's so sad that he's gone as well.
It is, and there's something about language, the way that language changes us. I don't know about you, but when I speak in Korean and I speak in English, I'm a different person sometimes.
Of course, do different personalities, I feel, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a freedom in speaking in another language that's not your mother tongue. And I think that freedom here was for Grandpa to have Shoko when suddenly he could talk in a different way. He could talk in a way that his family would not understand. He could write in a way that he could be freer, perhaps, to express his emotions, which he couldn't do as a more traditional Korean sort of guy.
Oh, that's such an interesting take on this, and definitely I feel true. And then the fact that she's maybe an outsider as well and not so closely linked, he feels like he can just get it all off his chest.
Yeah, and so Shoko's Smile, I think, well, all the stories are sort of these journeys of discovery. And this one in particular is learning how to love your family, but also not to be possessive of them. The relationship that Grandpa and Shoko have is something that the narrator and Grandpa could never have. But that doesn't mean that their relationship wasn't strong. In the end, even though she didn't know it, her grandpa loved her so much.
I guess it's easy, though. I think I've had that experience, even with a friend who maybe an uncle has seen and seemed to take a shine to, and you felt like, hey, that's my uncle kind of thing. But natural human emotions, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's the wonderful thing about this collection. The wonderful thing about Choi Eunyoung's writing and Sung Ryu's translation is that we have these imperfect characters in all the stories. They're all trying to get along. They're all making mistakes, and they're all creating bonds, sometimes destroying them as well. And it's like a microcosm of not just Korean society, but societies around the world. And I noticed reading this how accurately that Che manages to capture these feelings, especially when we break up with someone or when we lose someone from a relationship with a young man at a monastery that seems promising but can never be fulfilled, or the reaching out for a senior from university in a distant land who dies before her time, from the love of a mother for a child who has died, to the love of a grandmother who knows her time is up and will never see her granddaughter again. These are the kind of stories featured in this collection. And I have to say, Che captures these women's voices so brilliantly, and she enables us to access their emotions, to empathize with their struggles, and it's a really beautiful book.
Yeah, Tropico K says, and this is another good point, also sometimes people express their feelings better on paper than speaking, especially important for introverts. Yeah, I found that in certain greetings cards and stuff. When you sit down and think about it, it comes out so much more to the point and strong emotionally than maybe if you're just sitting down having a talk. You might just not even think to say those things.
I'm the opposite.
Really?
It's always about the spoken words rather than the written ones. Sophie says, friends can be lovers in the future depending on how it goes in a relationship. Shoko is just complicated. Shoko is just too close up. Shoko can't let go of the past, especially how her grandfather treated her. Shoko's grandfather never showed her any love, but deep inside her heart, her grandfather loves her.
Yes, it seems like these relations are really described in their realist form, not fairy tales or anything like that, not dressed up at all. What an interesting treat that was for us today. As ever, Paul, thanks for coming in and bringing this book, Shoko's Smile.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone. Thanks, as always, to the Literature Translation Institute of Korea for their help with copyright permission for this broadcast. Thank you to the brilliant author Choi Eunyoung for her beautiful short stories, and to Sung Ryu for her amazing translation. I look forward to featuring both of them in the future.
Paul, we'll see you next Wednesday.
I'll be back with another book.
You can listen to Check It Out with Paul Matthews on Arirang Radio's #DailyK every Wednesday from 10 a.m. KST.